Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Friday Society. I am so excited to say I'm sitting here today with Simone De La Rue, and she is the founder of the amazing fitness empire of Body by Simone. So, we are going to talk about everything from her 10 years of Body by Simone to what happened before that and what's next. But welcome back to the show and welcome, Simone.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited. Okay, so I just want to go into quickly. So, before every episode, you do research on the guest, and I Googled you. So I always start with a basic Google
Oh,
search. And
no.
I have to say, I mean, obviously, I know who you are, but it was like, okay, what is Google going to give me? And the bio for Google, I thought was the most, I just read it and I was like, wow, like that just feels so amazing. So I'm going to read it. And it says Simone De La Rue is a former dancer turned Hollywood fitness expert and founder of Body by Simone, dance based fitness studios. She is continually named one of Hollywood's hottest fitness experts and celebrity trainers with high profile clients and a growing fitness empire. Like,
I'll take it. All right.
right? I was like, oh my goodness. So, of course, we all know it takes a lot of time and a lot of hard work to get to that spot. So, I'm
Mhm.
incredibly excited to talk about, the very beginnings of your fitness career. So, can you sort of explain to our listeners way back in the day, like how you first got into fitness and what that looked like for you?
Yeah, it's funny that we should start with this because of COVID, and every fitness owner will know this. I was saying to my team earlier on the call, I feel like we are starting again. I feel like
Mm.
I'm literally starting from 10 years ago and rebuilding the business, you know, because of all the damage that COVID has done to any boutique fitness, actually any gym, I mean, all industries, but especially gyms and boutique fitness. So, yeah, I did have to take a moment and think about, 10 years ago, 11 years ago when this idea was born, how I did it. And I think, the key things then were maybe just pure innocence. I actually didn't have an idea of what I was getting myself into, but also I just had so much determination and grit and ambition and drive, and I was willing to do anything. So when I first signed the lease on my first studio in New York City, I tell this story, but I still remember being in the landlord's office. It was a very fancy office in New York City, and it was like it was just. I remember looking out the view from his office, and it was just New York skyline. And just like, oh my god. And they're like, okay, you have to sign this lease. And at the time, it was $10,000 a month, which was a lot of money. And I remember my hand was literally shaking because I was so petrified. I was like, how am I ever going to make this happen? But I didn't want him to see that, So by the confidence that I was showing is like, oh, I've got this. Don't worry about this. This is going to be fine. But I literally was terrified. And I remember signing my signature on that lease and thinking, okay, this is the moment. You have no choice. You have to make this work. Like, you're in now. You have to make this work. And so then I literally did everything that I possibly could to make that work. And that meant, I was myself and one other trainer at the time. I was working, training 7, 8 hours a day. I was working the front desk. I was cleaning the toilets. I was cleaning the equipment. I was doing the bookkeeping. I was trying to do like PR and marketing. I was like a one woman show. And I did that for a long period of time. So I guess if now, when I was saying to my team this morning, it's like I think we were over the years become a little bit more relaxed because we're like, okay, we've been in this scene and in the industry for 10 years. We've got this. This is the protocol that we all, and these are the rules that we all lived by. But everything has changed. The industry has changed so much. But the one key thing that I keep going back to is the passion for what I do and what I did back then, and that's, I say to every young entrepreneur, you have to have the passion to do it. Otherwise, you won't be successful, because if you're in it for the money, you're in it for the fame, you're in it for any of these other reasons, you won't survive, because it is such hard work having your own business. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and tell you, oh, it's fabulous. It's the hardest thing ever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just go back to thinking about the passion that I began with, and that's,
Yeah.
continue through.
Yeah. And I think it's so amazing too, because 10, 11 years ago in the city, boutique fitness definitely looked very, very different. So can you kind of explain like who were the competitors at that time? Because obviously in what we know now of boutique fitness in New York City and in LA is, it feels like a Starbucks. Like it feels like there's a boutique fitness studio on every corner. But back then, you were really one of the first ones. So what did that look like? And who did you kind of look to at that time for inspiration or for like guidance on how you should be doing things?
Yeah, it's funny. Um, I guess now when I look back, I was like, yeah, I was one of the first, and now we're in such an oversaturated market. 10 years on, I've had like 10 of my head trainers leave and start their own things, so it's like a breeding ground. But when I look back at it, I think it was just myself and Tracy Anderson at the time that were doing boutique fitness, especially in the dance cardio world. And then, of course, there was the Pure Bars and the gosh, I can't even think about the other competitors. But the weird thing was, I was so in the zone at doing just the day to day of what I loved that I actually didn't look sideways. I didn't take my blinkers off. I was too busy, like, this is what I'm doing. It feels good. It feels organic and authentic. And I'm just going to do this. So I really did learn on the job. And, I had no business skills. I didn't come from money. I didn't even really have a business plan when I opened the first studio. And when I tell this story, people are like, are you mad? Like, how are you going to pay the 10,000 in rent the first month when you didn't even have a business model, business plan? And I was like, yeah, obviously you can go down that route and it's probably the better way to do it. But there is also a way of doing it of just hard work and, and sweat and blood and tears and just trying to do, what you feel, what you love. And then everything,
Yeah.
energy seems to flow that way.
Totally. And I think, especially just what I'm hearing from your story, it feels like there's the undertone of like, take the leap and the net will appear sort
Yeah.
of thing, like you're just like, I'm going to follow what feels right to me and the right things will follow. And I think there's something so special and so powerful. And that's, I mean, why I love women in business, especially because I think that the intuition piece of navigating what's next is really important to sort of just listen to. So I love that. Okay. So before you signed the lease,
Mhm.
what did that look like for you? So were you like training a bunch of private clients and you were like, I need a space for my private clients? Or did you know that groups were where you wanted to thrive? Like, was it group fitness or were you really trying to focus on privates?
Yeah, I was actually working on Broadway at the time. So I was like, that was my night job. And then during the day, I was training private clients. And, this is another thing that I talk about was pure luck. But I happened to get in with one celebrity who, like, kind of took me in under their wing and then just introduced me to their friends of their celebrity friends. And so in the end, I ended up having 5 private training clients that I trained out of one of their houses. They all came and did different hours. And so at that time, I was working my butt off. I was training during the day and doing the show at night, but my focus was just on the one-on-one. I hadn't even thought about how classes would work, or I didn't have a space or anything like that. And I love the idea of working one-on-one because I like to try and get the best out of people, and people respond differently. So in a group class, people often need to be nurtured. So the private training was really my focus. It wasn't until maybe 6 months in of having the New York studio that I thought, how am I going to actually make the most of my time? Because at that time it was me, and then I hired my best friend. And so we were working, training, together. I was like, how do we make the most of our time? Well, this is how much it costs, how much we receive in income from one client. What if we fill a packed room of 30 people? How would that look? So that was really the aha moment. It was the financial thing of, well, we can make a lot more money if we get, a group of people in here. But once again, that doesn't happen overnight. Like I remember teaching class, and it felt like private sessions. When we first started, there was like one person in the class, two people in the class. It took a long time to build up to the 25, 30 people that we had pre-COVID.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. Even just, there are a lot of instructors who listen to this, and everything that I've heard from all the amazing people that I've been lucky enough to speak to. And someone like you, it's like Simone De La Rue saying, I've taught to one person. Like, it's very, very important, I think, for instructors to know, especially in the age of social media, right? Where like you look at all these super successful instructors and you're like, oh, well, they teach to 100 people and there's always a wait list and yada, yada. But it doesn't always start like that. And I think that is so, so important that you're just like, it takes hard work to build up to waitlisted classes. Like, it's a struggle and it takes a long time.
Hmm. Yeah, it takes years, because you,
Yeah.
especially back then when we were starting out. Yeah, there's nothing there's nothing worse than having to teach to one person. You're like, oh, this energy, and you're like, oh. But then I always say to all of my trainers that one person paid their money, and
Hmm.
if it's one person or it's 100 people, you still got to teach the same class and give the same energy and
Yeah.
show up. Mhm.
Totally. Okay. So 6 months later, 6 months after opening, you decided, let's try group classes. What happened? Did it, was it a slow trickle or did it start to catch on? Were people like, I'm taking this class. It's amazing. You got to try it out. Like, was word of mouth really what grew you guys in the beginning?
Yeah, it's interesting. Still to this day, the private training client is very different to the group class client. So it was like basically marketing to a fresh, group of people. I think what I was really, once again, lucky, I had that celebrity following that were doing the private training. And once press started to leak of who those people were and photos were taken, then people were like, oh, I want to do that. And then they're like, oh, but there's something that I can do that I can afford that's in my price range, which was the group classes. So we got a lot of, that's really, the word of mouth from the press, from the celebrity following is how I, really built up the classes. But, I always say to studio owners, you have to market it differently because it is a completely different client, the private training client to the group class client.
Absolutely. That's right. And you have some absolutely amazing celebrities and huge names. So, I hear from a lot of people, specifically people that have their own studio, and that it's your method. Like, it's Body by Simone. You created this amazing method where it's super fun and it's dance, but it's strength based and you feel it afterwards. Like, I took one of Alice's classes recently and I was like so sore the next day, but in the absolute best way, like in the best way. So, in the beginning, did you feel like it was your method and it was so hard to train someone else? Or were you just so busy that you were excited to kind of get other people onboarded? Like, were you holding it really tightly? How was it nerve wracking almost to sort of give it to somebody else? Or did you feel like, you knew you needed to do that to grow?
I mean, as I said, I hired my best girlfriend, who's still my best friend to this day. So I felt comfortable and confident, in her and our friendship. So that was probably such a great gift that she gave me because it allowed me. I just shared everything with her, But then over the years, you do become quite bitter and twisted because you work so hard at building up this clientele and you work so hard at building up and building up your trainers, and then they go and they take clients and they move on and start their own thing. You have to really dig deep and come from a place of love and say, I wish you all the best, and good luck to you, because it is like, well, that's my hard work that you've just taken, or they're the connections or the introductions that I gave you that you've just taken. But at the same time, 10 years on, this will continue for me for the next 10 years. It's just business. It happens in every industry. It's just business, and you can't take it personally. But I think at the time I was so keen to share it because um it just had an effect on women. You know, I could see how much women loved it, and the energy in the room and the ego-free environment. And my whole method has always been about selling a feeling rather than selling a look, or, you know. So if I came from a place of love and like acceptance and like everybody's welcome, and this is, you know, it's not just, because still to this day I charge the same price as any of my trainers. So if you take a private session with me, I'm not more expensive than any of my trainers. So I always believe that it's just an even playing field. Like, this is the method, you're coming for the method, you're not coming for me.
Wow, that is so amazing. And I feel I just feel really honored to talk to you because I feel such a steady balance of what you're saying of like very, super strong business insights and really understanding revenue generation and the marketing, like you understand that, but it is also everything that you're saying comes with like the heart. Like you really, and I really value that. And I think that is not many people are able to get there, where they've experienced all the success that you have and are still really grounded in the intention and in the value of what you're offering. So I think that's amazing. And I had this on a list. I had this on the list of questions way lower, but I think I would let's just start talking about it, of hiring and the people that you have around you. So, I mean, you're still working, you're still best friends with the person that you hired, which how rare that is. Like that just feels like that. I never even see stuff like that happen. So that's amazing. I would love to talk about, hiring someone super early / like hiring a friend, but then also secondary, and we can get to this part in a little bit, but you have an amazing reputation of people who work for you. Like all of your trainers, I know a few people that have worked under the Body by Simone team, and everybody has always just absolutely raved about working with you. So I do want to also talk about what you look for when you're, hiring a team, but let's first talk about hiring your friend and keeping that relationship going. Like, how did you do that?
Yeah, looking back at it now, that's not something that I would advise anybody to do because there's, such a fine line between friendship and business. I think I was just so lucky because we'd been friends for, 10 years prior to that. So we had such a grounding um, base to work with, but I think it can cause a lot of problems. So, I guess when you have friends working for you, there's loyalty there, but then there can also be resentment, So I think, yeah, I wouldn't advise anyone to do that. But at the time, it really, I guess it was so fun. It didn't even feel like work. Like we would just laugh and laugh and laugh, and we just had such a great time. And the clients feel that. People come in, and then the trainers who we then hired felt that. They just sensed that, of course we were strong, but then we would just goof around as well. So I don't know. It is definitely a balance. But hiring your team are everything. Like your team are, your representation. And the trouble about growing and getting bigger is you can't. Initially I used to watch every class, or I would be there supervising, or now, I mean, I live in Palm Springs, I have a studio in New York, a studio in LA. I just have to trust that people are doing what I had originally presented. But
Do you feel that the trust comes with time, or is it sort of just something that you can identify in people when you're hiring them of like, okay, this is somebody who's going to carry out my vision?
it's so tough. I mean, I honestly, when I think about all of this, because I've been heartbroken when trainers have left.
Mm,
And I ones that I didn't know, but then became really, really dear friends with. So it does become personal. I think
mhm,
that's the difference with a male and a female boss. Women, we
mhm.
are so heart led, and we are so, like, we do take things personally. So that has been definitely for me. And I'm a very sensitive person, a very loving person, nurturing. So that's been my lesson in all of this, is just to really be able to set a boundary and be like, okay, I'm your boss, and you work with me and you work for me, and I can't get too close to you anymore. But in the early years, oh my gosh, we used to we used to all go out together, we go to concerts together, we go to dinner together, which was also really beautiful, and I wouldn't have changed a thing. But I just think as years on of experience, sometimes it is better to have, set some boundaries.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Okay. All right. Let's go back. So, New York studio is thriving. When did you decide LA is where we need to be? We also need a studio there. Like, what did that thought process look like for you?
So I was traveling a lot to LA because a couple of my really big clients, celebrities, live there and filming there. So I was always on set in LA, and I would have to leave New York to kind of fend for themselves. And I was spending more and more time in LA, and that's when I realized, well, there's a huge market here for what we do. And I really I mean, I love working one-on-one with people. I love preparing an actress for a movie role. Like, there's really no better feeling than actually setting a 3-month goal and going, right, this is what we got to work for, this is what you have to look like at the end of this. It's really really inspiring, and I just loved it. So I started to get more and more clients there. I said, this is just silly. I was driving around to their house, to all the different houses, so my days were just like jam packed with and LA traffic is horrendous. So, I was like traveling everywhere. And then I just said, it just makes sense to have a studio in LA. So that's basically where the idea, there was a need, and I fulfilled it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Okay. And then the app. So that's obviously something I do want to talk about because it feels like, you had an app way
Mhm.
before COVID,
Uh-huh.
which does that feel kind of like a blessing that you had decided to get it way before COVID hit? So you weren't really scrambling like, everyone else was?
Yeah, we had the app 2 years prior to COVID.
Wow.
So I feel, yeah, I was so grateful. But to be honest, when COVID hit, we were just scrambling because we didn't know, like, should we close the studios? Should we not close the studios? Is this going to be a week thing? Is this a month thing? Like, nobody
Hmm.
had a clue. I mean, luckily we then decided to do Zoom classes, and then we have the app, and I was very, very grateful that we had that already in place. So like, you're missing us,
Hmm.
go to the app. I know there were friends of mine in LA. I don't think he wouldn't mind me saying, but like Training Mate is a big, gym in Los Angeles. They have 3 locations. They didn't have an online offering. So they were literally panicking and scrambling, to try and get
Hmm.
something up. I think they call it Mate to Go, which is really cute. So
Yeah.
yeah, they were just desperately trying to get something together. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so lucky and so glad that we do have the app.
I know. I saw so many studios just scrambling to get their classes online. And I remember I took a Body by Simone class, I think like 2 days after COVID. And it was one of the better experiences of virtual because it was just like you could just tell that it was something that had been in place for a while. And I definitely, yeah, that came through that it was like, it was seamless. Whereas I think others were maybe not so much.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about, you were saying that you very much feel like you've had to start over recently,
Mhm.
which I think a lot of people are feeling that and thinking, how do they sort of reconcile, maybe what their Q1 business goals were in 2020? They had to put that on the back burner. How do you navigate through knowing like when you needed to pull back and when to sort of trust that things were going to come back? So like, when you decided to shut down the studio for
Mhm.
in March 2020, did you still kind of consider your business goals, or were you like, okay, we need to really completely change everything? Like how did you sort of adapt to what you wanted for Body by Simone in 2020 versus what was actually happening?
Yeah. At the start of 2020, I had 4 studios, 2 in LA, 1 in New York, and 1 in London.
Hmm.
I now have 2. So we
Hmm.
literally cut 50%, 2 studios gone. Now I have 1 in Brentwood, LA, and 1 in New York. To me, the model was always the studio. When I started off, I wanted to have 10, minimum 7 studios all over the US, and then a couple international, Australia, where I grew up, and England. That was the idea. And I guess Soul Cycle really paved the way for that. That was just like the model, like Soul Cycle are doing it. We just build more studios. the biggest lesson that I've learned from COVID is we couldn't have that in-person experience. So what happens is you still have overheads. How are you paying that rent? How are you paying those overheads when nobody's in? Like, this is the thing I think a lot of people don't realize, because I've had some people say to me, oh yeah, but you'll just reopen it, won't you? I was like, how do you think we paid rent for a year with no income coming in? Like massive, and like West Hollywood, the rent was ridiculous. It's like our Fifth Avenue store. London rent was absolutely ridiculous because it's, UK, it's international. How did people think that and landlords don't help you. They were just like, oh, well, this is the deferred rent you have to pay us. And the PPP funding didn't cover anything. So, all the money just went to the landlords. So it was absolutely heartbreaking, because everything I'd always thought was studios, and now they're gone. What happens? They're gone now, And so luckily I have an incredible team, a very small team. And we all just started to brainstorm and work together and cry together and, like work out what on earth are we going to do now? And now it's like, okay, you can still reach people virtually. There's a whole world out there, like online is the way, and we've seen that. So we had to really shift the energy and shift gears to, 75% of the focus being on digital and 25% on brick and mortar. Now, it was the other way around at the start of 2020. It was 75% brick and mortar, 25% digital. So that's a huge, massive change. So then
Right.
your marketing looks different. Your income looks different, like everything, So it was like, I don't know. It was just,
Yeah.
it was just a massive change, a massive shift. But now the digital world's so saturated. Like every single person is on there doing a free workout and Instagram Live so we're in a crazy, crazy place right now.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And it's funny. I think you're so right that you see a brand and you just think it exists and that's what it is. And like, that's kind of, I think, where most people's brain power about it kind of just stops. Like no one considers the rent and the overhead and the water bottles and the laundry and like all of the things that go into your P&L for a studio. That it's just like all of the studios that I know that were able to do very well in COVID and like, COVID well, like not, they weren't crushing it, but they were surviving. All of those studios are ones that had major rent breaks because for one reason or another, like who knows why, but maybe the landlord was really understanding or, whatnot. But it is, if you were just in like a very traditional lease, it was close to impossible to survive. Like there really was just no possible way. So, I mean, I very much admire you talking about that. And I think, it's a good takeaway that you were like, okay, we need to swap our business goals, like the 25%, 75%, like that just needs to get switched. So I think that's, it's the reality of a lot of studio owners that the priorities moved around a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, this has been so much fun. I'm so happy that you're here. Final question before we get into rapid fire questions. But I mean, I feel like everyone is barely getting their head above water now. But what is next for you? What are you thinking about in terms of, the second half of 2021 into 2022? What is that going to look like for you guys?
I mean, the biggest priority is just to try and make money. Like we're really just trying to get our head above water again and not, be in debt with landlords. But the focus is just to keep pushing. We want to, keep the in-person experience because it is so great and nothing compares to, an in-person class. So I want to keep, Brentwood, LA and New York, those two studios thriving. And then a big focus is on digital. We're coming up with different programs, like my 8-week body transformation. That was my book 10 years ago that I wrote. We're finally turning that into a digital program. So that's a massive focus for this year, making, our workouts a little bit more accessible from our app onto like a web platform, and just trying to keep on going. Like I'm starting to see a little bit of glimmer of hope and a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with the mask mandates being lifted, classes, will start to gradually fill up again. But we've still got a big slog ahead of us,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to be as positive and
Mm-hmm.
optimistic as possible. And I look forward to being able to, in a year or 2 years' time, look back at this and say, wow, well, we were the business, we survived this.
Mm-hmm.
But right now we're just we're just like,
Mm-hmm.
trying to keep our head above water.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, thank you for, your honesty with that, because I think there is a lot of false positivity sometimes in the fitness area. And I think a lot of people, who are like, oh, it's great. Everything's going great. And it is, I think it's very important that you're saying, like, yeah, there's a backlog of a lot of lost business, and catching up with that is going to take time and some serious hard work and a lot of reevaluation. So I appreciate that.
And even a backlog of people's fitness levels, because they spent a
Mm.
whole year sitting on that couch, or like trying to do a quick 10-minute workout here and there. Like no one's fitness level is like what it was before COVID, when we were
Yeah.
doing hour-long classes and then hopping on the subway in New York and going to something else, so
Yeah.
it's like rebuilding everybody's fitness levels and stamina as well, not only building
Totally.
business, but
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. I know. I know. I'm feeling that as well. Every time I go to a workout class now lately, I'm like, was it always this hard? But so funny. Okay. Well, are we ready to get into rapid fire questions?
yes, go for
Okay. Let's do it. What is your absolute favorite move in a Body by Simone class?
Um, it's a jump squat, but it's my own dancer's take on it. So when you do the jump squat, you bring your legs like adduction, bring your legs together and like click your heels and then come back down again. So it's like a dancer's jump squat, which
Okay.
you'll see me do probably in every single class and every single video.
I love that. Okay. That's amazing. What is your favorite song to work out to?
Anything Calvin Harris, but like his latest ones, Peace, Love, Regenerator. That there's
Okay.
like two of those songs on there that as soon as I play it, I can't stop myself.
Okay. Amazing. What is software that you can't live without?
Software.
Mm-hmm.
I guess Spotify. Is that what you
Yeah.
mean? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good one.
I guess Spotify. Right now, Zoom.
Yeah.
Could never do my
Yes.
meetings without Zoom. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
iPhone.
That's a good one. Yeah. I know a lot of people are like my iPhone.
Yeah.
What is the best business advice you ever got?
Don't operate from a place of fear. So, like when you said before about, you know, jump and there'll be a net to catch you, exactly that.
Yeah.
Just go for it and learn the lesson on the way down.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. If you could live anywhere in the world that is not beautiful Palm Springs, where would it be?
I would say probably Australia, where I grew up, because I miss my friends and family there. So yeah,
Yeah.
Sydney Northern Beaches is pretty beautiful.
Okay. I know. I gotta go. I've never been. Advice you'd give to your younger self.
Appreciate it. Appreciate every moment and really um, give yourself a pat on the back. I think I was so focused on like what's next, what's next, what's next, that I didn't
Mhm.
actually appreciate the moment or the success. I was
Mhm.
still like, oh, there must be more, rather than no, that was amazing, well done.
Mhm. Yeah. A dream job besides what you're doing now.
My dream job would be probably a travel host. I love to travel. And I would like, that would be the best, wouldn't it? Like, here, you're
I
going to
love
Thailand.
that.
And then you're like, now try this food. And like, you stay at this hotel. And you like, yep, sign me up. I'm
Yeah.
be a travel presenter for sure.
I love that. I mean, Body by Simone retreat.
I know.
You could curate it.
Pipeline.
Okay, good, good. I'll be there. And finally, one lesson from 2020 that you want to keep with you.
Work-life balance. I think I was a workaholic. I mean, I had my son 2 years ago and kind of really stepped back from the business and allowed other people to lead. Um, for a little bit there, and which was wonderful. And then I realized that I am a workaholic, and I just worked far too much. And so COVID has really taught me to put the phone away, or stop emailing. It's like you
Yeah.
can wait till tomorrow. Like, be present with your family,
Mm-hmm.
really enjoy life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that so much. Well, Simone, it was an honor talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you? And for everyone listening, I will link in the show notes to the app, and all of you guys can definitely take these classes because they're absolutely so much fun. So I'll put that in there. But Simone, where can people keep up with you?
Yes, so my Instagram and Facebook are Simone De La Rue Official. I've started a life coaching business like the past year. So my website for that is simonedelarue.com. And then all of my fitness, the Instagram is Body by Simone. The studios are Body by Simone. The app is Body by Simone. Yeah, I think that's it.
Amazing. Okay, we will link to that. Thank you so much. And I can't wait to get back in the studio with you guys, and I will talk to you soon.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank
Thank you so much. You did such a great job.
you.